Hi, Hank Akkans here, Supply Chain Dynamics, Chapter 9, Quality Cascade, Sysdea Gameplay 6, Historical Behavior. And this is an overview of the primary order flow, the most important flow in the model. The time scale is set in weeks and starts at the beginning of 2000, so week 0 is the beginning of 2006, sorry. Um, and will follow the flow of orders as they cascade down the process. It all starts with a lovely sales success story where you see that orders that are around 1,000, we've normalized these orders, these were not true historical absolute numbers, but the pattern has been maintained. And they grow to a level of, well, let's see what that level is, somewhere before week 50, around here to in week 42 we have almost 6,000 orders, and that's then a peak, and that's wonderful, of course. The next stage in provisioning is takes just 1 week, so peak there is not so much later. The next stage of the happy flow of the sunny day scenario is field install, takes 2.5 weeks, and then we go into initial use. People are there for 8 weeks, and so what do we see then in the install study? You see a sort of smoothed version, the happy flow of the what we see here in the inflow. Only delayed because of the lead times in the various stages. One stage, 1 week in the provisioning, 2.5 weeks in field install, 8 weeks in initial use. If you then look at where the biggest peak is, then that is around week 52, 53, 55, 55. So some 13 weeks later. So that sounds fine and really nice. It's the problem, the cascading starts here. Because not all orders are dealt with quite smoothly. There are orders that fall out. The first to fall out is a provisioning fail rate. You see here with two peaks, the failure, and that fail rate leads to two peaks also in the backlog of provisioning rework. And that can be fixed, but it takes some time. If you look at personnel flow, somewhere around here is provisioning, and you see that the peak in provisioning responds to this. By the time that we have all these people in provisioning, they are able to get rid of this rework, but then it's already quite late. And this peak, together with the associated quality issues, goes into the next stage of field install. Again, there a peak, one bigger one, slightly later, more around week 50. As a delayed response, the peak in input up here. Um, that and these two rework bubbles, if you like, lead to problems in, first of all, in customer calls. You see that those calls, especially the calls that come from the rework up here, they have quite substantial peaks, but also from the regular flow, which is a bigger one, also a big flow. You see some 3K here before the end of the first year in terms for rework, 20K around here. So you see that a small group of rework customers leads to far more calls than the regular group does. The installed base in the beginning isn't so big, but still the installed base also calls quite a lot, especially the new customers do. So this peak then in sales leads to a slightly delayed peak in rework, which leads to a quite big peak in calls. On top of that, what also happened historically was that almost at the same time when there was this peak in calls, there was also a problem with the network, so that the entire installed base got into problems. That starts in week 40. In week 40 we see this peak, which I've represented as a step function, since we don't know precisely how big that was. We do know that it was before the end of the year. and that it was substantial. I remember suffering from those problems myself, although I'd been a user of the service for some time. So as an operational installed base user, and that hits also here. So that makes the provisioning WIP even bigger, although in absolute terms we look at less than 1,000. This is rather the kind of tipping point that you don't want to have around this time. So that leads to a substantial growth also in FT in call handling, as you see around here. By the time this goes in from well over, let's say, 250 in staff to around here in the week 100 to 150 in staff, and that then leads again to problems in performance, because the service handling, that there is another dip around that period in call handling as a result of the build down, the scale down of the workforce in call handling. The last stage of the cascade is in complaints. In complaints, the result of the rework in field install and in provisioning leads to more calls, as you can see here, in around the same period of customers having problems. Those calls come in at the same time. The likelihood that they will actually result in a complaint is greater around this period, because the call center is overloaded, and so we have this huge peak of over 1,000 calls coming in. Don't forget that we have a maximum of 5,000 calls, 5,000 new orders, so that's a substantial number if you look at it in comparison. Around a third of 1 in 3 new customer orders leads to complaints in certain weeks. So the total number of complaints also rises very largely, which leads to a very long lead time of like 20 weeks. And these customers, the customers that have filed a complaint and have been for months without a solution to their problem, these customers are extremely angry, and those are the customers that really attack KPN senior management when they come down to those national TV shows. And why is this peak so huge? Well, basically, quite simply, because there are the complaint handling rate never becomes more than 600-700, and if the inflow rate then can easily come to 1,500, yeah, then you've got twice as many coming in than now going out. And why is the complaints handling rate not greater? That is because the workforce in complaints handling is not allowed to grow for greater than 40. And with the productivity that goes with that, that simply means that there are not enough people to do the work. So the problem that starts from a huge success in sales cascades down to a peak in rework, which cascades down to an even bigger peak in call load. And both of these peaks result in a huge peak in complaints that isn't resolved for a long time, because the people that could quickly resolve those problems, at least, those complaints, are kept. And the people in the operational problems, the process that can solve problems, they are not kept, but that doesn't mean that the problems solve themselves.